as Jubes always says, this show is about you, so get your views in. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. Lots of you already getting in touch, particularly about this Operation Early Dawn. It's something we've seen before, but it's being resurrected very much in the light of all these arrests due to the violent disorder. So we're going to get straight stuck into that one. So Labour triggered Operation Early Dawn. This is an emergency measure to essentially avoid prison overcrowding, as hundreds of people involved in the recent violent disorder are fast-tracked through the criminal justice system. So this will lead to defendants charged with a crime and waiting for a court appearance to be held in police cells rather than prison cells, or bailed until a prison space is made available somehow. But is this the right approach? And could we actually, as a result of this, see fewer criminals arrested if, instead of prison cells being used, police cells are being used with suspects? Then what happens if there are further arrests? Where are all these people going to go? And should Labour, politically, be adopting a Tory plan they previously criticised? This has been done before under the Conservatives. So let's get the views of my wonderful panel. Alex, can you help us make sense of what's happening here? Is this a direct response to the huge numbers of arrests we've seen with relation to the violent disorder and the like?
In the immediate term, yes. Unambiguously, it's because we're arresting hundreds of people in one go. Interestingly, the government models how often people are going to be arrested at what times, and August tends to... So crime is always with us, but is seasonal, and August is supposedly a time when fewer crimes, proportionately, or at least fewer people are caught committing crimes. And this year, there's been many more of them. That has a knock-on effect throughout the whole system, and so immediately, yes, it is about the riots. In the longer term, it's because we haven't been building new prisons and haven't been extending existing prisons at anything like the extent to which anyone responsible for the prison estate has been warning for some time we needed to. So whilst, yes, in the immediate term it's about the riots, in the medium and long term, going back indeed year after year, the prison system has been under significant strain. I mean, I stopped practising at the criminal bar 2009, and this was already an issue.
And do you think it's right that those who were involved in the violent disorder, be that online or offline in real life, have been fast-tracked in this way? I
don't know about the online part, but in the riot part, in civil disorder, in unrest on our streets, society coming apart at the seams with people openly defying any basic notion of social norm or law and order. Yes, absolutely, I think. You know, when it comes to riot, government has to deal with it immediately and demonstrate that it won't differently, and demonstrate that it won't continue. And I'm talking a lot, so just say one other thing. Yeah. It would be a bit rich of any Conservative, as I am, to make too much of this, given that it's precisely what the Operation Early Dawn, it's precisely what the Conservative Party said we were likely to have to do this summer as well.
Yes, this is a long-standing problem, no doubt. Lee, do you share that assessment, just initially, that the reason we're in this situation is because there's been a huge number of arrests, particularly in the north of England, but in other areas of the country, across the country, really, and that's put a massive strain on resources, and essentially we're having to now ration prison cells?
Well, there's a particularly acute problem arising from the riots, like Alex says, but even were the riots not to happen, the prisons are bursting at the seams. So they're massively overcrowded, and as of Friday, in England and Wales in total, there were only 1,300 places left in prisons. So, and they had about another 330, 340 people arriving for incarceration at the end of the week. So the prison system is already bursting at the seams. So even without the riots, there's no doubt that whatever party was in government at the moment would have to be doing early prisoner releases and probably activating this Operation Early Dawn, which was already activated back in May, I think. So, as Alex says, the problem is we've got, by sort of European standards, quite a punitive justice system that likes to put quite a lot of people in prison, rather than, for example, community sentencing, which is used more frequently in places like the Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries. But then we don't invest in prisons.
But is that really true? Because there were some shocking statistics that were revealed from Neil O'Brien, a Conservative MP, and he did an FOI with the Ministry of Justice, and he found for some crimes, such as burglary, assault of police officers, you have to have multiple convictions of the same type of crime in order to spend any time in jail. You've also got, at the same time, shocking statistics about the number of crimes that are ever actually solved in this country by the police, down to 5.5%. I mean, can we really talk about being tough on crime when those statistics are there for everyone to see?
The question is, what does tough on crime mean? I mean, is it effective in suppressing crime? No. But do we have a system that incarcerates people at a higher rate than some of the European countries? Yes, we do. We have a system that's very bad at punishment. Partly, people are not being sent into prison because judges know that the prisons are full. So they'll try to do anything they can to avoid compounding this problem. We're also very bad at punishment, and we're extremely bad at rehabilitation in this country.
So those are two different debates, the one that you were just rehearsing into one. The first is how we treat people once they're caught, prosecuted and convicted. And the second, perhaps more important for the general public, is whether people are caught in the first place.
Yes.
And no amount of punitive treatment of those who are caught and convicted will ever deter someone if they think they won't get caught in the first place. Indeed, this is now circular, actually, because that's part of why it's so important to deal with riots in the way that the government is. Because people will have conducted themselves in the way we've seen on the streets of Britain, smashing stuff up, setting fire to buildings and so forth, in part because they thought nothing would ever happen to them. They thought there were so many of us, it's going to be so hard to identify, it's going to be so hard to catch us, that we can do what we like. And it's actually a very important message to send that that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that concerns, I think it's now the top 2 issue in this country for people when they're surveyed about what they care about. Immigration and crime are unsurprisingly very high, 1 and 2, as a result maybe, or, you know, in the same context as these riots and things, it's brought all these issues to the forefront, the crime. But do you worry that people look at how things are working right now and you see arrests made relating to the violent disorder go straight through the criminal justice system? You see people banged up, yes, some for Facebook posts, yes, for very inflammatory and sometimes racist Facebook posts that actually call for violence, but Facebook posts nonetheless. You see that, and you see people who've thrown bricks at the police go straight into a prison cell. Quick justice. Why can't we have that for every crime?
I suspect a lot of people will feel that way. I mean, I think Alex is right that the government probably has no choice but to act very harshly against the rioters, because if they don't, it will be seen that you can basically do what you like with impunity, and then the police would be overrun. But to come down particularly harshly on the rioters, a lot of people will be saying, well, what about the problems that, you know, I'm far away from any of these riots, right? They're very localised. They're very distressing to people caught up in them, but they're very localised. Whereas for lots of people, there are crimes that are plaguing their communities, like burglary, for example. So the latest statistics on burglary are that
depress us more.
In the past 3 years, the police have failed to solve a single burglary in 48% of areas where
that
the
is
statistics were
appalling.
gathered. So less than 1 in 25 burglaries result in a charge. And so lots of people will be asking that question, you know, why can't you come down harsh on the crimes that are affecting us in our communities?
Yeah, and it does start with antisocial behaviour. If the police don't turn up for basic antisocial behaviour issues, then the trust is gone and criminals become more and more, you know, emboldened, in my view. I think psychologically that must happen. Alex, I'm interested to know your thoughts. It was something that Martin was talking about. We heard from Keir Starmer, he's in Northern Ireland, and he was talking about some of the riots that happened over there, in Belfast in particular. He came out and he said, racist, thugs, essentially, and doubled down on that.
Yeah.
Do you think it is as clear-cut as that? Of course, we did see the most egregious examples of targeting of, for example, Muslim-owned businesses.
Yeah.
We saw some Muslim people's homes being targeted. But do you think he's lazy in not drawing, differentiating between those who go after, you know, individual Muslims and their businesses and this and that, and, you know, someone standing with a placard saying enough is enough, get immigration down?
I'm not in the business of defending rioting, and so I'm not going to demur from criticism of those who have been rioting. The difficulty for me isn't there, where people can have their own, you know, is it mindless thuggery? Is it people with no sense of responsibility to others anymore? Is it racism? You can put lots of different causes into the people who actually go out, throw bricks, set fire to stuff. None of they're indefensible in my view. The trouble for me isn't that. The trouble for me is it seems to elide between those who were violent and those who were not violent, who went because they wanted to demonstrate their deep concern about our country and its condition and took part in peaceful protests. And the enthusiasm for which the post-appalling events at Southport, the enthusiasm for which this government has just criticised everyone when they were at pains during and after Black Lives Matter and at pains after George Floyd to say largely peaceful, mostly OK, fringe lunatics, fringe unpleasantness.
People see that. People see that. I mean, Lee, do you think that Keir Starmer should try more to differentiate the sort of racist actions of a small minority of people with other people who might turn up to a protest about illegal migration? Or do you see them all as being the same thing? Well,
I don't think it's just about Keir Starmer. I think the extent to which the sort of ruling elite and the commentariat have sort of closed ranks around this issue and done exactly what you're talking about is that they don't want to solve the underlying issues, or they find it too sensitive to talk about the underlying issues, where these riots are just the tip of the iceberg.
Seems cowardly.
Well, you can understand the reaction against the unrest because it was quite shocking, and clearly, I would say there's three different kinds of groups of people that were involved in the unrest protests / riots, right? So there were undoubtedly far-right agitators who were stirring up trouble. And these people involve, some of these people will be kind of crypto-fascists, Nazis, racists, etc., no doubt. The second group, I think, is just a kind of opportunistic, thuggish element that just likes to create mayhem and have a fight with the police.
Just joining in,
joining anyway. The third were, as Alex says, people worried about the state of the country, the state of their communities, and a ruling elite that has largely just abandoned them and is not listening to them anymore. And there's deep frustration. Now, only, a few hundred people turned out in each town, but there's many more thousands, millions of people who broadly share that sentiment and want something done about these problems. And it's much easier for the political class to just say, all of these people are totally beyond the pale, so we don't have to talk about these issues.
Quickly,
if we look past these immediate events, my concern is that you take all the concern about right concern about rioting and so forth, and you wind up instituting new laws which effectively say anyone who's concerned about migration, anyone who's concerned about boats coming from France, you're far right, you're racist. Right? That's the government overreach I'm worried about.
Well, it also doesn't chime with what the Labour government was saying in the run-up to the election.
Only a few short weeks ago.
Talked quite tough on illegal migration, if you can cast your mind back that far. Lots of you getting in touch. William says, if you want to free up prisons, stop jailing people for Facebook posts or tweets, deport all foreign criminals and arrest actual criminals like thieves and killers. That's William's solution. Colin says, when I got burgled, I rang the police and was given a crime number. Nothing else happened. No one came. Just a crime number for the insurance. I mean, that is just so depressing. I mean, I'm sure many of us have a similar experience. Michael says, so Joe Public suffering with crime rates, antisocial behaviour like we've never seen before. Starmer, the clown, he says, idea is let them out, knowing prisoners are 75% proven to go on and commit crimes within the first 2 years of being released. Fantastic logic. I don't know about that 75%, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. And Stephen says, once again, the police to be used as prison officers to guard prisoners in unsuitable, overcrowded accommodation, leaving even fewer police on the street. Starmer's administration is a very expensive train crash. Well, there you go. John says prisons are too nice to be in. Well, there's a difference of opinion. They're overcrowded accommodation versus too nice to be in. Which one is it? All I know is that prison guards, I mean, I have a lot of admiration for them. It must be a very, very difficult job, considering all the violence and drugs and whatnot.